let's get straight into this week's video on how to create, send, and make money from loops. The first thing you're going to need to do is decide what kind of loops you want to make. This is important because your loops are going to need to be in this style specifically for the people that you're going to send them to. I'll explain that in a little bit. So pick a niche. If you're making beats as well alongside making loops, I'd recommend just making loops in the style that you make beats in. Let's say you make NF orchestral type beats. It's easy as just making NF orchestral loops. That way you can leverage the loops you make both in creating beats from those loops, your own beats, and then sending those loops out for other producers to use to make beats. But if you're really unsure what style to make, I would just not even think about making a particular style, just make loops and see what naturally comes to you. Then you can start to figure out what kind of style that is, what artist that's similar to, and then hone in on that style. Also importantly, it doesn't have to be just one style of loop you make. You can make loops in multiple different niches, and often that's a way to actually make it more interesting, is to make different styles and target different producers with those different styles. So now you've decided what kind of loops you want to make. Obviously now you've got to make them. I've pulled up a project of a loop here, which I want to show you. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of how to make good sounding loops in this video. That will be in a video in the near future. However, absolute musts I'm going to say now. You've basically just got to picture yourself listening to this loop, but you've never heard it before. You've got to think, would it interest you? Could you see yourself wanting to make a beat with it? Because that's how people are going to react. And part of a contributing factor to whether people use this loop is if it's easy to work with. So what you've got to do is make sure you arrange the loop in the right way. I like to have the main 8 bars or so at the start, because the likelihood is people aren't going to listen for very long if they've got loads of loops to go through. So why not have the main event, which would be the hook or the chorus at the start, to interest them. Then you can arrange it differently so that it offers a different sound, which then they could use for the verse. And that's what I do with every loop I make. I make often at least 2 sections, one as the chorus or hook, one as the verse, and then sometimes a pre-chorus or a bridge. And people don't have to use those sections if they're using your loops. It's just a really good way of showing people what it could sound like. What's really key in making and sending loops is this: stemming each layer of the loop out so that it looks like this. Make sure to put space between each layer and make sure that it's the same amount every time. I put 4 bars between each layer. And the goal with all of this is to just make it as easy as possible for producers to use your loops. So stemming it out properly is crucial. Then bounce the loop out in both WAV and MP3. That way you can send the MP3 out to producers in emails because of their smaller file size. But then also if someone uses the loop and requires the WAV, then you can send them that as well when they ask for it. Then name the loop. This doesn't really matter. I normally just use one word to describe the feeling that the loop gives. And then put the key and BPM in the title. Again, just for ease for people using it. Also chuck your name or username in there so that people know it's from you. Now you're at a point where you can send loops out, but who are you going to send them to? The best way to find producers to send loops out to would be to type into YouTube for the type beat that your loops are in the style of. So let's go back to the example I gave at the start. If you make NF type loops, orchestral loops, type into YouTube NF type beat. Then go into the description of each video and get the loop email of that producer, or get their Instagram and then DM them asking for their email so that you can send them loops. How you word that DM is really important. You don't want it to come across too spammy, but I've already done a video explaining how you can word that DM, so I'll link it above here. You can check that out if you're curious. Now you'll have to spend a fair amount of time building up this email list to send to loads of producers, but don't let that stop you from sending loops in the first place. Even if you've only got 4 producers to send to, send the loops out. You can build the email list up week by week. My suggestion is to send loops out weekly. For me personally, I think that's the sweet spot. So sending the email out, type a little message to make it personable, but obviously don't make it too long. Don't try and sell anything or promote anything in the email. Just send the loops with a little message. I know a few people have asked me to explain what I'm about to say, so I'll try and do it in the best way possible. You want to send the terms of agreement with each email. So you can copy the one I use, I'll put it up here. It's basically the terms and conditions for using the loops. I require a 50-50 split. That's pretty common. And it's to cover you from someone stealing your loops or using them and not giving you a split or getting your permission to use them. It basically ensures that you get what you're entitled to. So pause the video and copy this if you need to. Put it into a text document and then send it out with each email. Now all you need to do is continue building that email list. And remember, if you're making multiple different styles of loops, create separate email lists for those styles so that you're targeting the right producers. Continue to find producers through YouTube. Often the best way to do this is to filter it by upload date. That way you're seeing just everyone who's uploaded in that type beat niche. And Discord is also a great place to find people to send loops to, and you'll be well on your way. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to collab with me and use loops that I make, feel free to check the link in the description. I'll see you in the next video.